Oh, banger.
Welcome back to another episode with Fight Night Picks. As always, we're brought to you by SimBody. Vertiball is now SimBody. If you head on over to their website, simbody.com, you're going to get all the great products that you know and love, including the SimBody Vertiroller and the Vertiball that you have seen most likely here in studio. Look at that. Place it, lock it, attach it, Vertiball, all sorts of great stuff over there if you want to roll out those old tired muscles and you don't want to go with that old lacrosse ball. They're also coming out with that very new product that you can see right in front of you. And if I head on over to my cart, look at that. I've already got a Vertiball over there. A little bit of a deal right there. And if you hit the try for 60 days risk-free, use the promo code FNP and you're going to get 10% off your order. With that code FNP at simbody.com, you're really helping out another local company here in New Brunswick, Canada. Can't wait for it. The new name, SimBody at simbody.com. And as we always say, let's get into it.
A last look at the big card. Be sure to head into the chat and have your say. Let's get into it and join in Fight Night Picks ? Kicks.
And just like that, listen, I'm back and getting set for UFC Fight Night. It's over there. It's Nashville. It is Sandhagen versus Font. As always, one half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen. Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. Matt's European vacation. It should be National Lampoon's movie at this point. But it continues on, so I hold down the fort for you folks. Over there in the chat, Noah's hanging out. Daniel, we got Steven, Todd, TC, Bingus Man, Party of Walrus, interesting name. Prince Vegeta's son, as always, Mac, and Starth Smith, 77 Porter. Elders hanging out as well. Stephen McNamara, repping Cleveland. You know it. They got that win over the Jets the other day to start preseason. You'll love to see it. Kellen Mond with the Browns. Then, of course, you got Joshua Dobbs and, of course, Deshaun Watson. So if Deshaun doesn't play out, listen, Joshua Dobbs and Kellen Mond, I can get excited about that as a Browns fan. But you know, Fight Night Picks ? Kicks for the QMK fight card. And there we go. We get to see a little bit of a view into what you're going to experience here with ? Kicks. Over there in the chat, Stevie Bergie joining in, likes that free content. And listen, I would appreciate a couple of likes if you could. If you want to hit up the super chat, please do so, and you can do so here. It definitely goes towards supporting the channel. And when it comes to supporting the channel, I've got something charging back behind me. You can't see what it is just yet, but I do have something there. I'm going to be utilizing that one tomorrow to make a very special episode of the previews and predictions coming up for that Luque versus RDA card. It's so much fun that I didn't even include the thumbnail in the preview because I don't want to spoil any bit of it. So look forward to that this week. Donald E. guys tuning in from Atalanta, heading to London. FNP, the perfect layover. Joey saying Browns getting worked until the fourth teamers went at it. They definitely did over there. And Jake is tuning in from New Jersey. KEXZP. Super chats get me going. Are you like KEXP? Like watching those tiny concerts? I like those. Gotham Knight wants you to toss out a like. But if this is the first time that you've tuned in to Fight Night Picks ? Kicks, I'm going to do the exact same thing that we normally do here with Fight Night Picks. I'm going to head into the chat. I want to hear from you folks. Max tuning in from Canton, Ohio, home of your NFL Hall of Fame. Joe Thomas, Hall of Famer from the Cleveland Browns. Bub Collins hitting up that super chat. Smash the like, y'all. Paul Gasses and Diaz wins tonight. Yeah, that should be a big time fight for sure. Scott B, what's up, man? Keep up the good work. All right, so as we always know with Fight Night Picks ? Kicks, we go from the bottom to the top. Started from the bottom, now we here. And the bottom fight on this card to get us kicked off for the prelims is Ode. It's Ode Osbourne taking on Assu Alamabayev. And it looks like the UFC, they dropped the Y from his last name, but they kept two S's. So it'll be interesting to see how they do spell Assu Alamabayev's name on Fight Night. But what do we know about him? He's competed with Brave. He was one of the last M1 champions. Now, it was an interim status. Alexander Daskalchuk was the real M1 Global champ, so eventually they had to fight, right? They did, and they fought over with Brave. Daskalchuk looks great in the first round, but in the second round, Alamabayev with a big-time submission win. And 17 total wins for Alamabayev. He hasn't lost in a meaningful amount of time. Coming in on a big win streak, taking on Osbourne. And I know I broke this fight down at the start of the week saying, listen, you had a big fighter representing Octagon, kind of Brave, because Octagon was doing those mishmash kind of Brave cards, and you had a big time fighter over there competing not that long ago against Tyson Nam. So we like that. We like to see it. It was Azat Maxim taking on Nam, who had 7 fights of UFC experience, and for Osbourne, 7 fights of UFC experience. So slightly more wins than losses at 4-3. So for Osbourne, his last time out, he beats Charles Johnson, a guy that can wrestle on his own terms, that has a 5-round tank of cardio. And when it comes to a guy like Alamabayev, a lot of spin kicks, a lot of crazy things. Mac hitting up the super chat. Can we get a parlay? Mac, I hate to say it, I can't give it to you right there. Pink Fruit saying, my biggest bets this card are against my Canadian brothers. And Bingus, or Bing Usman, saying, I'm addicted to going with Osbourne as an underdog. Ode is the underdog, and when you look at it, I mean, I see it there, Lucky Day saying these Kazakhstan dudes are no joke. When you look at a guy like Alamabayev, what I was going to say before I headed into the chat was Alamabayev leaves himself liable to getting hit. And I've seen this out of a couple of different fighters. We have one next week, and Santos going to be making her UFC debut. She strikes, but she doesn't really have any movement with the head, and that could cause her some problems against Juliana Miller, who also has the same crippling issues. But if you look at it from Alamabayev, he does get hit down the middle. Clay hitting up the super chat. Wow, that is certainly appreciated right there, but it was a good week for you last week. Thanks to me and Matt for the continuous stream of great analysis. Man, thank you so much, Clay, for that super chat. You've been doing the damn thing over there every week in the chat. I'd like to know who you have in this fight for sure. MMA Fight Club is tuning in as well. So again, it's the spin kicks to the body that you like out of Alamabayev. He'll throw that spinning roundhouse to the head. If it hits big, it's awesome, but aim big, miss big. Sometimes you can get yourself out of position. That's what you worry about with Alamabayev. But on the flip side, Alamabayev's wrestling is very good. So we'll see how Ode makes out in this fight. He's been training a lot at Black Cobra Striking Systems with Francis Ngannou's coach and everybody else's coach, Dewey Cooper. So great to see there. But at Fight Night Picks for the total votes on this one from our Instagram, 51% going with Alamabayev to get the win, 49% with Ode Osbourne, really close right there. MMA Fight Club, double that up. These boys at FMP are legit. That is much appreciated. I had a so-so week last week, but Matt knocked it out of the park with a 9-2, so good to see there. But yeah, I have a hard time with this fight. It is tricky. I'm going to go with that guy being Alamabayev with his wrestling. And I touched on it at the start of the week, where Ode Osbourne, he's had, bonus-worthy fights and bonus is in the UFC. For Alamabayev, you beat Zach Makovsky. He got outstruck in that one. He outgrappled Makovsky. It was a close fight. He gets the win over Imran Magamerov. Gee whiz, I struggle with that one by decision. That was a good one. The Daskalchuk win, the Chris Kalaitis win as well. Listen, that is a guy out of, Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada that you can't watch out for. Christopher Cruz, bro, WTF is up with these cans that Alamabayev has fought. I just mentioned 3 UFC Daskalchuk was supposed to fight in the UFC. It didn't happen, but yeah, he has some pretty good wins there, Christopher Cruz, when it does come down to that one. So this should be a fun fight. But the other thing is, for Hauser's picks, and to kind of give shade, I guess, to Alamabayev's record. Last time out, Alamabayev was supposed to headline Brave CF 66 against their guy, a fighter out of Bahrain. The fight fell out. That was Magomed Idrisov, and on short notice, he got Kenneth Magignat. And you saw it on the video at the start of the week where he threw up Magignat's record, and it was bad. It was so bad. So I do have Alamabayev in the fight. Matt did as well, but this should be a big-time fight. Clay going with Alamabayev in the fight. Not all that confident. All right. Now we get into one of the more important fights of the weekend, because for Sean Woodson, he's been off for a very long time. 9-1-1 is the record. His last time out, the draw against Luis Saldana. You had the illegal knee in the first round, so Saldana loses a point there. He had 2 knockdowns in that first round. It was a hook from Orthodox, and then he power jab was the other knockdown that Saldana had. You have Woodson rallying round 2, round 3. You give him one of those rounds. You take a point away from Saldana. It gets it close. But it was interesting because one of the judges scored it for Saldana. One of the judges scored it for Woodson. And then, of course, you did have a draw there. So you did have a 28-28 from Michael Bell. So an interesting one there. Sean Woodson, I throw that picture up there every single time. You saw it at the start of the week where he used to box at 215. I ended the video on that one. But Woodson, a guy at 145 that... Is he the most well-rounded fighter? I don't know. I mean, does he have good takedown defense? He does. But if you do consider it for a guy like Sean Woodson, the takedown defense, we saw it against Terrence McKinney. I went back and watched that fight this morning to get ready for Terrence McKinney on short notice. He's competing next weekend. That'll be an interesting fight for him against Money Mike Breeden. But for Woodson, once he gets moving, it's almost like a cardio kickboxing class, but he doesn't throw the most leg kicks. He does a lot of shoulder roll. He has a lot of fun. Bingus, man, I like Woodson, but yeah, the line is what it is. Rick saying, appreciate you two every week for the deep tape study and analysis, going deeper than just showing strikes per minute and others, but painting a picture to provide context on the fighters that many don't know. Love y'all. Rick, I appreciate that. Are there shows out there that throw out just stats? Because, I mean, I do stats every now and again. Like, I'd say once every, 6 videos? Do you think that one's fair? Maybe twice a card? It's not something that we do very often. But that's kind of the weird thing about me. I don't like to watch a lot of MMA content because then you just sound like either a soundboard or an echo chamber. So I try not to watch anything else. It's a lot of football, baseball, hockey, all that cool stuff. So when it does come down to this fight, though, Dennis Buzukja taking this fight on short notice. And for Sean Woodson, well, he's getting ready for Steve Garcia. And then it was supposed to be Jesse Butler. And then it was supposed to be Myron Santos. And now it's Dennis Buzukja on the week of the fight. And Buzukja, one of those guys, he can switch it up. He can mix it to the leg, to the body, to the head. He can mix in a little bit of his wrestling. Everybody's been shouting his praises for the last, year since he was on Contender Series. Got the win week 1, Dana White's Contender Series, but he wasn't Joe Pyfer, so he didn't get the contract. Aljamain Sterling calling for it. Merab Dvalishvili calling for it. John Anik calling for it. And now finally, you get to see Dennis Buzukja in the UFC. Queen Boudica, Ariel doing his usual, disrespecting a world champ. I don't know about that. Rick, you'll appropriately, but give context to the stats rather than just regurgitating the stats. Yeah, you can't be doing that. We've also got Rick talking about O'Day. Slop, who are the go-to people on YouTube you watch for football and baseball? No, like, I just watch the games. I try not to watch stuff on YouTube too much about the football and the baseball. I just like watching the games. Mond was bad. Yeah, Mond was pretty bad. And Sadikov doing big things right now, too. Yeah, I went back and watched that Sadikov fight with McKinney this morning as well. And both those guys, Sadikov and Dennis Buzukja, out of that Longo and Weidman MMA camp. So when you do have a look at this fight, Sean Woodson taking on Dennis Buzukja. Only a slight favorite is Sean Woodson. This fight was announced earlier on this week at a minus 180. If we have a look at Fight Night Picks for the total votes on this one, 60% going with Sean Woodson. And I know Matt and I both with Woodson in the fight. But if you've got that long reach, you have to be able to utilize that long reach. So we'll see if Woodson's able to do it. He's dropped some fights that he was winning for sure. And again, the last time Woodson out there, I mean, he really did struggle in that first round against Saldana, only to pull out his last time. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he makes out in this matchup. You got to hydrate well. So both of us Woodson there. This was a fight where Matt and I were split on the pick at the start of this one. Matt going with Cody Durden, and I have the former EFC Cage Warriors champ Hadley. UFC Fight Pass on their YouTube channel, they threw out one of Jake Hadley's fights to try and get you amped for this one. They threw out one of his big-time Cage Warriors matchups when he took on Shaj Hike, and that was for, main card spot. 2020, he gets the win there. He wins the belt against Luke Shanks, and then he beats Mitch Raposo in Dana White's Contender Series. But when you look at a guy like Hadley, people expected big things at him, right? Like, he was a 2-1 favorite against Alan Nascimento. He tried to mix some things up. He looked like he was a little bit tired with the grappling. He didn't get it done there. But Hadley's picked up back-to-back big-time wins, finishes his last 2 times out there. And for Cody Durden, you look at the loss that he has in the UFC, and you think about it a little bit. You let it digest, and it doesn't really wear all that well. But that was when Jimmy Flick was the guy, and he was winning on Contender Series, and he looked really good with the first-round finish. He loses to Flick. He loses to Muhammad Makayev. The last 3 wins, JP Bays, who fights next week. And then you also have Carlos Mota, the former LFA champ, and Charles Johnson, the former LFA champ. And Cody Durden in these fights, it's wrestle, 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 wrestle. And so it is tricky when you look at a guy like Durden who's just nonstop on the gas. He'll tire himself out. He will completely expend his gas tank like he did his last time out, to where he can make it a little difficult. Eric's saying Jake is going to get ragdolled. I don't know about that. For me, when I look at this one, like Jake Hadley, I think he's a bit better of a striker. We've got another comment out there from Relco John saying, like your picks, you guys are square. You guys are square. Way to go, Reiko Johns. You're watching this channel, and I'm not watching your channel. So that's the big difference right there. Jake Hadley, though, I mean, I like him with his hands. I like the fact that he can mix it up that way. The cardio concerns me. The takedown defense concerns me. But for Jake Hadley, I mean, going back when he was Cage Warriors guy, like he would get rocked in certain fights, but then rally himself with the wrestling, and that might actually get him caught against a guy like Cody Durden. So when you do consider a fight like this, Hadley is about a 2-1 favorite. Matt going with Durden. I'm gonna go with Hadley, and I'll take that square look to the face, and we'll see how it goes in this one. And I am eager, like, you know, the little bit of a slam against Reiko Johns, but I'd like to see who you have in this fight, because it is always fun to hear from you over there in the comments section. Clay is going with Durden, probably wins round 1, drops the other 2, and maybe gets finished in round 3. So we'll see how it goes in this one. P wants a like for the lads. That would be much appreciated. You guys have already hit up the super chat quite a bit, so I really do like that. Russ, great point. UFC Wrestling, baby. Go Cody. And we got a little bit of a pop and popcorn action from Manny. Manny saying pop and popcorn. So now we get into a big time fight. And again, I want to hear who you have in this one. I want to hear what you think about Billy Q taking on Damon Jackson, because this is a top flight fight at 145 pounds. And it's kind of a surprise because Diego Lopez gained stock in a loss. Gavin Tucker was a walking fight of the night. Like, remember his fight against Sam Cecilia? And then the flip side of that coin, remember his fight against one Ricky. It's not Rick, it's Ricky Glenn back in Canada. But that gets the big billing. Those guys are in and around that, what? You'd say top 30. So are these guys, Billy Q and Damon Jackson. Now, they both got finished their last couple of fights. Billy eats that knee against Edson Barboza. Damon eats that hook against Dan Ige. And from Billy Q, he kind of talked about it in an interview with JHK MMA All-Star. And he said that he was talking quite a bit with Dan Ige and Eric Nixick before this fight. And Billy Q is one of those guys that trains out of Tampa, Florida. He's been there for a very long time. He's had Matt Frivola with him and around him to get ready for a fight like this. But both of these guys, adept in the wrestling, both these guys good with their submission ability. Billy Q wears it late in fights. Damon Jackson built of like the stuff that $2 steaks are made out of, like the ends. So when you look at a guy like Damon Jackson, all-American wrestler, JUCO guy, and it makes this fight really interesting. Matt had Billy Quarantillo in this fight. I have Billy Quarantillo in this fight, but yeah, we'll see how this one makes out. C. Von Boss saying Billy Q stops the panic takedowns, jabs his face off. When you do consider it though, like you look at Damon Jackson when he fought Pat Sabatini, and you can say somewhat similar build, I guess, somewhat similar matchup. And Damon lands that front kick, lands a couple more shots, gets it down on the mat, gets on top, and that's it. And that's when Damon Jackson got going with the Action Jackson nickname. His brother passed away, and he went with that one. So I think this is going to be a fun one. I think it's going to be a great fight, and I can't wait for it on the prelims because these two guys are just outside of that top 15, and there's not a ton of ranked fighters on this card. And then we move it forward, and we have a look at welterweight. And if you look at these two guys, I mean, Jeremiah Wells, Carlston Harris. Harris is striking. I'd say underrated. Harris is wrestling. That too. I'd say all of Carlston Harris's game is underrated. And if you look at him inside of the UFC, we look at it for the big time loss to Shavkat Rakhmonov, who most people think like future champ. You could throw that on him like Kevin Lee. But the wins, Impa Kasanganay. And that one ages well because Impa's just mowing guys down over at the PFL. And you look at it for Carlston Harris's last time out, he gets a big time win as well over Jared Gooden. And the debut was the Anaconda choke against Christian Aguilera. For Jeremiah Wells, beats Blood Diamond. The controller went on pause for 5 seconds. Beats Court McGee. Hard to finish him. The last guy to finish Court McGee was Santiago Ponzinibbio. And then after that, Wells gets that split decision win over Matthew Semmelsberger where, I mean, Wells got hit and got hit quite a bit. So got dropped twice in that one. Eldar saying Wells by knockout. Prince Vegeta's son saying it's going to be a tough fight. Brandor saying Harris 100%. Yeah, this is definitely not the easiest fight when you're trying to make a pick on it. And Matt and I split on this one with me going the way of Jeremiah Wells and Matt going with Harris, but it's a really, really tricky fight where you could see Wells trying to go to the well to get some of those takedowns. And Wells, the draw that's on his record, that one's against Basel Hafez, where was it really a draw when they read out the final scores? Kind of is tough that way. Cool Banana Boy, what's Mozambique mean? I've been to the country Mozambique. Is that the nickname? I'm not 100% sure what it is. Guys out of Guyana training out of RFT down in Brazil is Carlston Harris. And I mean, Harris, the former champ over with Brave. You have the former CFFC champ being Jeremiah Wells. Bingus, I was thinking Harris when I saw the height difference, but his performance against Gooden was kind of lacking. I think that one's tough, though. Like, you look at it as a win, and you look at it as a pretty good win. Jared Gooden was taking that one on really short notice. He came in at 177. We gave him a lot of flack on that. And listen, Harris was getting ready for a grappler. I know he can strike, but a grappler in Abubakar Nurmagomedov, and he drew a totally, totally different opponent, Jared Gooden, who is purely a striker, and he's not going to grapple with you unless he grapples himself into a submission. So, yeah, I do have Wells, but I can see why Matt's going with Carlston Harrison. This whole card is pretty darn hard to pick. So, yeah, it's going to be tricky. Jake saying, does Wells train from Renzo Gracie Philly? Yeah, he trains at Marquez MMA with, like, Renzo Gracie Philly, the mismatch. So, yeah, that is another reason why I like Jeremiah Wells in the fight. So, then we get into our next one. This one at bantamweight, you have Kyler Phillips, the Matrix, taking on Raoni Barcelos. And Raoni is one of my favorite fighters to watch. Like, I'll get that out of the way right now. There might be a little bit of bias in it. I didn't want him to fight Umar Nurmagomedov his last time out. I didn't like that fight, and I definitely didn't like the result. It was a tough knockout loss. Raoni was supposed to take on Miles Johns back in June, and I had Raoni to beat Miles Johns in that one. The fight didn't happen. Johns was scratched, so now Raoni ultimately gets the returning Phillips, who hasn't fought in, what, a year and a half when he beat Marcelo Rojo? Old Marcelo. That guy was tough, but the chin wasn't quite there. So I think this is going to be a really good fight, and this was another one where people got upset in the comments this week. Oh, you say everyone's a hard fight to pick. I think this one's a hard fight to pick. You know why? Because Raoni, for the fact that he's 36, he's got 21 pro fights to his name, he's a great wrestler, he has underrated jiu-jitsu, he has really good volume and good power, and in his fight against Timur Valiev, that was absolutely insane. So if you look at a guy like Raoni, could he put the pressure on Kyler Phillips? Could he end up conceding a first round to Phillips, ultimately winning the second and the third? He very well could. And Phillips had that fight that was against Hadley and Paiva where it was all Phillips in the first round. And then he kind of slowed down as it went on. He loses that one by majority decision. I thought it should have been a clear 10-8 in the first, but Paiva won the second, Paiva won the third. So it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. I know both Matt and I have Kyler Phillips to get the win in this one, but like to see who you're thinking over there in the chat. Ziohe saying Kyler is way too good in my opinion. Lord Nikon, a lot of fights are hard to pick. Haters can get banned. Yeah, that one. I wouldn't necessarily say that one, but Cool Banana Boy, Kyler is one of my favorites to watch. This could be fight of the night going with Kyler. Chandler likes Kyler. Prince Vegeta's son with the Matrix. And Bingus saying most fights are hard to pick. That's why most people. Yeah, it is a pretty tough one. Clay, the man of the hour, saying Phillips is good. Prime Barcelos would melt him. Current Barcelos should still win. Great value on the odds. Obviously, both these guys lost to Victor Henry. Barcelos more recently. For Phillips, it was off of The Ultimate Fighter that he did lose, but Victor Henry's a hell of a fighter. His UFC career has been really weird. Like, I didn't know what to think of Henry. I love Josh Barnett, who's his guy. Like, Victor Henry is a Barnett protege, and you're not going to find a bigger Josh Barnett fan than this guy right here. But, yeah, be an interesting one for sure. Chandler Witt doesn't like the Osbourne. Nevada State Athletic Commission didn't like it either, and that's why Kyler Phillips had the layoff. And it'll be interesting, too, like, next weekend's main event, NAC and Jeff Mullen kind of with the crackdown for Vicente Luque, and he had to get some big-time permission to fight in that fight against RDA. So I'll be interested to see how Vicente Luque makes out in that one against RDA. So both of us in this one with Kyler Phillips, reluctantly so, I guess, because I always tend to pick Barcelos in this. And this is one of those fight cards just like that. I don't find myself picking Bahamondes in fights. I find myself picking Ludwig Klein. And Klein's one of those guys. At 145, he might not have a height advantage on guys. He will have somewhat of a reach advantage against some featherweights, but he's going to have a size advantage. Just, listen, he doesn't want to end up like John Lineker, consistently missing weight, but winning fights. So for Ludwig Klein, Don't have to worry as much about the weight cut. Comes in at 156 for this fight at lightweight. Tricky sidewinder. I mean, he throws the kick to the body, throws the kick to the head. He can get it done with his hands. Not really a straight shooter up the middle. He likes to, mix in a lot of, 2-3 combos to his arsenal. For Ignacio Bahamondes, I mean, this guy's weird because he's tall and he's long, but he doesn't necessarily use his reach and his range all that well. He did his last time out against Trey Ogden, and I think that one's going to be a lot of fun, but a lot of people seem to be siding with Ignacio Bahamondes in this one. At Fight Night Picks for the total votes on this fight, because I've left you guys in the dark on some of these 77% going with Ignacio to get the win in the fight. We've got one La Jaula by decision. Stevie Berge saying, I do love Klein. I love a Klein fight too. His last one against Herbert, he was going to lose, and then Herbert lost himself a point, so it ended up a draw. Big Buff 403, Dogs barking tonight. Drew saying, Ignacio by KO easy. And then we got Niners bar none. G.A. Craig. Chat made blessings upon blessings. ROYG. You're talking in riddles right there. You're talking in riddles. Eric Ramirez saying, Nacho by choke. Be interested to see if we do get that one. Rick saying Klein is a dog and keeps getting good value. For me, it's just like Ignacio Bahamondes had that kickboxing record. I think I mentioned at the start of the week, 35-0-1 as an amateur, as a kid growing up. Then he's a national champ at 14. He moves to the States, but he has lost to certain grapplers. Like Preston Parsons was able to get the win out there. He lost on his way up. He became a regional champ. He ends up in the UFC, and he consistently looks pretty darn good. So rain on you guys is what the man's saying. Okay, I got you. 49ers fan or Niners fan, what do you think about the Cleveland Browns? I'd like to get a thought there. I think Brock Purdy's going to be an interesting look for the Niners, and they've had depth at quarterback. Trey Lance, obviously, with the injuries, that sucks to see, but I always like watching the 49ers on the weekend, that's for sure. Blues fans, 1,700, a lot of fights that could go either way. Which do you feel most confident in? I like Ode as a live dog based on Alamabayev's competition. I like Alamabayev's competition. I think people just don't like the short notice fight that he got when he was supposed to be in a main event. They scratched it, and then they gave him a jobber out of the Philippines. I don't like that, but other than that, I do like his level of competition, actually. Most confident on the card. I don't like giving these out, because if you're wrong, you look really, really bad. So that one's really tough. Bahamondes maybe, but I don't necessarily love it. So yeah, we'll move on from there. I'm gonna look at our next fight. We have Alexa Kammer taking on Tanner, the Bulldozer Bozer. We were split on the pick on this one. Matt going with Tanner Bozer. I have Alexa Kammer. Bozer, again, what was it, 20? Let's look at the notes really quick. I want to say, yeah, it was 2014 was his first fight at light heavyweight since then. That was earlier on this year. So Bozer makes the weight for his last fight. He makes the weight for this one. And taking on Kammer, who's been off for a really long time. And I mentioned this at the start of the week, but for Alexa Kammer, he said he had hand atrophy, nerve damage, all different kinds of thing with his left hand, ulnar nerve damage, and that's his jab hand. And then he had some nerve issues in his shoulder too. So I'll be really interested to see how Alexa Kammer makes out with a really long layoff off of 2 losses. These two guys are fighting for their jobs, and that's why this one's on the main card for sure. But when you do look at these two guys, I mean, for Alexa Kammer, gets it done with the hands, gets it done with his boxing, trains at a strong style in Independence, Ohio, Cleveland Browns territory with Stipe Miocic, and for Tanner Bozer, trains out of Hayabusa out there in Alberta. He's a Bonnyville guy. He's coming at you, in that Edmonton-ish area and training with KB Bowler. And that's a good guy to train with to get ready for Kammer. I really think that one kind of lends credence to a fight like this. But when you look at a guy like Bozer, he had the volume, the leg kicks, the boxing at heavyweight. Where's the speed at? And when you look at Bozer's last opponent, you're taking on a guy in Iwan Kutsalaba that goes balls to the wall in the first round, but after that, Kutsalaba is not necessarily going to pose you problems. So we got Niners, bar none, with the super chat. Cleveland wins the NFC North. Chubb's over 2,000 yards. Man, if you get over 2,000 yards, you're Chris Johnson type. I got a Chris Johnson over here somewhere. Yeah, he's over there in the corner, but Chris Johnson, the old McFarlane. I was a huge Chris Johnson fan. Cleveland will finish last, my man. Come on, Scott B. Cool Banana Boy looking for the knockout. Yeah, Boser will KO Camera within 2 rounds, and that's where I have a hard time with it. I mean, for Boser, we haven't seen the best of him in the UFC. We saw the Felipe Lins win, and that was obviously a good one, and I think that still holds water because Lins has looked really good since that fight, and then he had the win over OSP, but I think OSP is a little bit past it, so this one's definitely a tough one when you're trying to make a pick on it, and it's surely tough. We're both split on it. 60% at Fight Night Picks going with Tanner Boser to get the win, 40% going with Alexa Kammer. JD saying Skinny Boser is due, and Wildcat saying someone getting KO'd. Almost 400 tuning in on a Saturday afternoon. I'm like Jason Derulo back in the day. I'm riding solo. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's dance. What are you saying, Craig? Let's dance. What's up? Got to get some of that hydration here on the show. You got Gavin Tucker taking on Diego Lopez next, and I love myself a Gavin Tucker fight, and I can talk about, like you have these little run-ins when you cover the fights, and some people, they'll hop into the chat and they'll be like, these two guys, they give the fans perspective. They're not talking about how they're going to get finished or the over-under, this, that, and the other, but we try and do it pretty professional. We try to be MMA media members, and way back at FLA, Fight League Atlantic number 2, we saw Gavin Tucker cornering a young man, and it was Mathieu Tarantini who ended up losing a fight. And at that time, it was Matt and I were talking amongst ourselves. You're still all masked up, and we were like, hey, doesn't Gavin Tucker have a fight coming up against Pat Sabatini in like a couple of weeks? Why is he here? And of course, Gavin Tucker's out of the fight. So you didn't like that, and then Gavin Tucker was supposed to go out there and take on Pat Sabatini again and again, and it's been like 3 times that he's been out of fights. I know his Topology only shows 2, but Pat Sabatini did an interview before his last fight where he said, yeah, I was supposed to take on Gavin Tucker again, and it fell out. So you hate to see that one for Tucker. It's been a really long layoff. He's now 37, but what does Gavin Tucker do well? Well, he throws really good volume. He's got good power. He's well-rounded, but when you've got that little bit of an X factor to counter Gavin Tucker, guys tend to beat him. I mean, Ricky Glenn had his number on the night that those two guys fought. Tucker was all over Sungwoo Choi. He was all over Billy Q. He was all over Justin James. And then Dan Ige walked in there, marched forward, landed a hook, and knocked Tucker out cold. So you don't like the layoff. And I'm a big Gavin Tucker fan, like, truthfully. You go back to the time when you are a fan. 2017, you're looking at Gavin Tucker. You're watching it from I was down on the ice or down like in the arena portion, and man, there was never a bigger pop. But when you flip it forward and you look at Diego Lopez, black belt in jiu-jitsu, he's a jiu-jitsu coach at Lobo Gym and MMA. The big win for Alexa Grasso lends credence to Diego Lopez, and he looked really good in a loss, and people like to really point to that one there. Ryan Doherty, wish UFC Fight Pass were better. I couldn't even go back and watch Ode Osbourne's last fight because it takes him like 9 months to make content available. Ryan, I guess sometimes you just got to go to the actual card and then you watch the fight. Yeah, Browns, Niners, still hitting that Browns line. Yeah, Browns I think they're going to have a good year this year. Toss some likes up there, but both of us in this one going with Lopez. I think the jiu-jitsu is just a little bit better, but I think Gavin Tucker is a better striker, and if he can get in and out and his speed's still there, don't sleep on Gavin Tucker in this fight whatsoever. At Fight Night Picks for the total votes, 73% going with Lopez, but there's too much of an unknown there for Gavin Tucker, and that's why I don't have the win. I said it at the start of the week, and I'll say it right now. If Tucker wins, it's going to be awesome, not just for him, but for MMA around here. And David Shaw, he's with the UFC, and he's pumping that content, the international content. And Shaw's always talking about getting fights back to Eastern Canada, and he never even mentions Quebec in that. So if Tucker gets a win, maybe get another fight card in Halifax. That would be awesome, especially to cover with Fight Night Picks. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Lord Nikon, people selling Tucker way too short. I don't watch other people's content, so I don't know what they're saying, but hopefully we gave him some shine because Gavin Tucker is one of those guys. When he's on, like if you just kind of close your eyes, then open them really quick, you go, hey, is that Dominic Cruz? Is that who I'm watching out there? Gavin Tucker can be that guy. Dustin Jacoby's taking on Kennedy Nzechukwu, and I said this in some of the other fights. I said, listen, I always pick this fighter, and I never pick this fighter, and that's why I have a hard time with it. And if you folks know Fight Night Picks, I always pick Dustin Jacoby. I never pick Kenny Nzechukwu. And now I'm at a crossroads in life, and I don't know where to go. It's like that old song, Feed Jake by the Pirates of the Mississippi. He's been a good dog, my best friend right through it all. If I die before I wake, feed Jake. So in this fight, Kennedy Nzechukwu, I mean, he's shown giant leaps and bounds progressions in his fight. And I think it's just, he's got to be in the fight. He's got to be, like, just in that space to get in there and fight. Because we've seen fights where Kennedy's had to be willed and coached by Saif Saud, where it's like, go do X, Y, Z, go throw the head kick, do this, do that. You remember in his fight against Dennis Bryant back in 2018 on Contender Series, Kennedy was also on the 2017, the inaugural season of Kennedy Nzechukwu. So for me, I do have Nzechukwu in the fight. Prince Vegeta's son saying Bisping went with Jacoby. Queen Boudica Radiant saying love them both, leaning towards Kennedy, but definitely can go either way. And the reason why you can make a case for either guy is Jacoby with the volume, Jacoby with the kickboxing lineage. Jacoby's one of those guys where the first time we saw him in the UFC definitely wasn't the best version, and now you look at these two guys, and at the start of the week, Jacoby was ranked in the top 15, but these two guys are right on the fringes of things. So biggest man saying I always pick both of them, and I'm going with Jacoby here. I think he outvolumes Kennedy and avoids the knockout and gets a decision. The other thing when you consider this fight is, for Jacoby, even though he got dropped by Murzakanov and the reactions weren't all that great, don't forget he rallied in that fight. And for Kennedy, we'll see what version we get, because if he gets stalled out in the middle, you could be like a Dawoon Jung fight, and that really wasn't the best version of Nzechukwu. He's the king of the comeback, and we've seen that as well, like his fight against Danilo Marquez, his fight against Carlos Ulberg as well. At Fight Night Picks, 68% going with Nzechukwu. Both of us with him in this one, but yeah, this is going to be a really, really neat fight to see for sure. Bit of love there from Mr. Moneyline DMV to Elijah Moore. Man, I've been telling anybody that's going to listen. Like, I liked Elijah Moore when he's with the Jets. I can't believe they just kind of let him go in a trade. Like, that is a big move for the Browns. So, a fun one there. Co-main event of the evening, the former strawweight champ, Jessica Andrade, taking on Tatiana Suarez. And I kind of rested on it a little bit. I saw somebody had a comment out there this week. It came out today on Sunday saying, like, Tatiana Suarez has beaten nobody. Nothing matters. My guy, she beat Alexa Grasso and finished her. Alexa Grasso went on to be a champ. She beat a former champ in Carla Esparza, who then after that fight went on to be a champ again. So for Suarez, yeah, maybe some of the wins, Amanda Bobby Cooper or the tune-up fight that she had at 125 against Montana De La Rosa, they don't really look all that good. But take everything, put it in a vacuum, realize all the injuries that Suarez has had, not just in her wrestling career, but in her MMA career, and the layoff that she had between Nunes and then, of course, De La Rosa. And you look at all of that, and then you put it into a fight against Andrade, who's been sputtering of late. 2 losses in a row. Is she able to get back on the horse, so to speak? If you look at it over there in the comments section, what do we got? We got Benga saying, really want Andrade to do something crazy here. You talk aim big, miss big earlier on in the card with Assu Alamabayev. Andrade is one of those fighters, or she comes out and she looks like she did against Lauren Murphy, and it's just defend takedowns, mix it up on the feet, set a significant strike record, and 30-25 it. And we could see that out of Andrade. It's almost a shame that this isn't a 5-round fight, because for Suarez, I mean, if Suarez wins this fight, you have to think she's next in line for a title shot at 115, or at least in the mix. And for Andrade, you lose this fight, what do you get? Luana Pinheiro, Angela Hill. Everybody wants to see Andrade fighting, your next title challenger, Amanda Lemos again, and we remember that fight. But yeah, this is a really, really tricky fight for sure. And Andrade has struggled, and I saw Dan Tom threw it out there on Twitter against Southpaws with the takedowns. You look at it against Blanchfield. Blanchfield beat her on the feet, took her down, finished it. Valentina Shevchenko was able to get it done with the takedowns against Andrade. And I think that's kind of most people's thinking in this one. At Fight Night Picks total votes, 68% Suarez. I have Tatiana Suarez in the fight, but yeah, this is going to be a really, really interesting one. Everybody remembers that Andrade fight against Namajunas where she slams her down, gets the win, the title's hers for sure. So, split music. Yikes. Suarez is a women version of Daniel Cormier. You see a lot of people mix up women and woman, and you could say female. I think that would throw out there pretty well. Joe saying Suarez's grappling is very strong. Over 400 tuned in today. Marcus, I need my guitar for Nashville. Gotta get into it. Yeah, Nashville, getting the fights. Last time you had a Nashville fight card, that was when Wonderboy took on Anthony Pettis, and before that, Cub Swanson, who took on Artem Lobov. Cub Swanson fights next weekend, so look out for a big-time Cub Swanson fight. But in the main event for this one, Corey Sandhagen accepting the short notice fight and vice versa. Rob Font coming in for Umar Nurmagomedov. Both these guys weighing in successfully. 139.5 for Sandhagen, 139 for Font. What? Successfully? It's 140-pound catch weight. So you like to see that out of both of these guys. But for Rob Font, I saw some people this week kind of alluding to it. Like, Font's got that problem like Albert Duraev. That eye puffs up when he gets jabbed quite a bit. Corey Sandhagen has a speedy jab on the outside. Sandhagen with the knees, the elbows. He's almost like a younger version of Tony Ferguson. And just like Tony Ferguson, Sandhagen can get cracked by maybe fighters you wouldn't expect him to. You remember his fight against Mario Bautista? That was a wild one. His fight against Yuri Alcantara way back when. He had that close one against Petr Yan for the title. He had the loss to Aljamain Sterling. When you look at it for Rob Font, some awesome fights, and everybody slept on him his last time out against Adrian Yanez. Yeah, I'll roll the collar for that one. I did have Rob Font to beat Adrian Yanez, but Font was in a similar situation, taking on a young up-and-comer who's just beating all comers. You hate to use the word twice, but you have to there. So for Font, if he's able to get it done quick. Font does have a good gas tank. 8 main events between these two guys since 2020 in the UFC. I believe it's, 3 for Sandhagen, 5 for Font, something like that. Eldar saying Corey will stop him, maybe by TKO. Rob Font by split decision is what Let's Dance is saying. Eric Ramirez, Sandman with the flying knee. We've got Split Music saying female, LOL. F. Smith 99 likes Bahamondes. Prince Vegeta-san, if Rob wins, Boston's getting drunk tonight. Yeah, shipping up to Boston. I didn't hear that 20 times a touchdown Atlantic last weekend in Halifax. Yeah, I did. Both of us in this one, we do have Corey Sandhagen, but interested to see you guys over here in the chat. 82% going with Sandhagen, almost 300 votes on that one. Clay, maybe round 1's close, maybe round 2 after that. He drowns in the rising tide. Corey Sandhagen to get the win. Eric saying Font catches Corey as he does something crazy. And Rick saying doctor stoppage. Font takes damage until the corner doc ref stops it. I do have Sandhagen in the fight, and I know Matt does as well. But listen, your likes are appreciated. Your super chats have been awesome. You guys have been doing the damn thing this week. And again, next week, doing something completely unorthodox. And I'll spill the beans a little bit for everybody that tuned in this far. There's a new logo for this one. There's a new intro for this one. There's a voiceover on the intro. It's not going to be filmed like this. It's not going to look anything like any other Fight Night Picks video has ever been. Filming it tomorrow and then editing hopefully Monday. So we'll see when the video actually comes out. But it's going to be complete new filming gear, new everything. So it's going to be, it's going to be something. But I haven't been this excited for something in a while. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. As you know, with Fight Night Picks question mark kicks, we stack the deck one more time, and I'll give you those final picks and predictions. Ode Osbourne taking on Alamabayev, both of us with Alamabayev in this one. Sean Woodson taking on Buzukja, both with Woodson in the fight. You got Hadley taking on Durden. We're split. I have Hadley. Matt has Durden. Matt was on a roll last week, trying to bridge that gap a little bit. Quarantillo taking on Jackson, both with Quarantillo. But honestly, I had a pretty hard time trying to make my mind up on that one. Wells-Harris split on this one. I have Wells. Matt has Harris. We then have Barcelos taking on Phillips. I had a hard time here, but both of us with Phillips in the matchup. Klein taking on Bahamondes. Both of us with Bahamondes in the matchup. Bozer taking on Kammer. Roll of the dice. Give me the unknown with Kammer, but Matt going with Tanner Bozer in this one. Lopez versus Tucker. Selfishly, you almost want Gavin Tucker to win. We both have Diego Lopez, but I think it's going to be a fun one. Party of Walrus. We are here for progress and evolution. Evolution is a mystery, just like that crazy intro. Lord Nikon. Craig, you should get guests to stand in for Matt so you don't have to do this on your own. Hey, what if I like doing it on my own? Both of us with Lopez. Dustin Jacoby taking on Kennedy and Nzechukwu. Both of us with Kennedy to get the win. In the co-main event, Jessica Andrade taking on Tatiana Suarez, both with Suarez. And in that main event, both of us with Corey Sandhagen. You guys doing the damn thing over there in the chat. Your likes, your super chats, much appreciated. I got to go pound the pavement. I got to finish my notes. Those are the ones from this week, but I do have to finish my notes for next weekend's card. That's Luque versus RDA. A couple of debuts on that card. I already mentioned one of them, Santos making her UFC debut. You got some second times out. Marcus McGee, me and Bobby McGee. Look at that. I do still have the record. Charlie Pride. Joey hitting up the super chat. Listen, I appreciate the super chat right there. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just make your own picks and have fun with it. You are going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it. Hold on. Somebody asked a really good question. Who's the signed poster of in the background? That's an awesome question. I'll come back. We're still doing this. Heather Hardy right there. She's taking on Amanda Serrano. So not about the Jake Paul and Nate Diaz coverage, but yeah, Heather Hardy over there in the corner when she fought with Bellator. All kinds of combat sports if you guys are combat sports fans. So listen, you guys enjoy the day. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.